Hello, everyone. This is the ReCon coming to you from a random pit underneath the earth. I talk a lot about the dangers of socialism and how personal irresponsibility causes it, but today I want to talk about the deeper, darker dangers of it. So, everybody, grab your drinks, sit back, let's enjoy this intro. In economics, there's this idea. In fact, this is really the definition of the study of economics. And that is that people have unlimited wants, but resource-wise, we are scarce. And economics is the study of how to bridge this imbalance of unlimited wants versus scarcity. Socialism, it tries to respond to that by saying, if people have unlimited wants, we should be able to give them unlimited things. The issue is that socialism does not account for scarcity. And this can result in horrible disasters. Venezuela is an extremely modern example of socialism failing in a horrible way. That's why it's been brushed aside by so many elites, intellectual elites, because it doesn't fit the narrative that they're pushing. Really, it just adds another notch to the belt, next to Cuba, Russia, Germany, China, Italy, Greece. Anyway, you get the point, okay? There's a lot of examples, and we really could just keep going. Here, I have an article titled, Fact Check. They're going to fact check me. Socialist policies alone did not destroy Venezuela's economy in the last decade. Oh, great. Let's see what did. A Facebook post shared, this whole part is just talking about the spread of the quote-unquote misinformation that socialism destroyed Venezuela. So we'll go ahead and skip ahead. It's true that Venezuela once had a thriving economy that fell to deep poverty. But there's more to it than just a simple explanation of socialism, Stephen Morris explained. Morris is a professor at Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, where he teaches Latin American studies and is now researching corruption at the National Autonomous University of Mexico in Mexico City. I'm a couple drinks in right now, guys, just so you know, if I stumble over my words a little bit. The post is particularly correct to the facts, but simplifies things in a bit. Its conclusion for obvious political purposes, he said. In the 1970s, the country experienced a healthy economy because of its success with oil. Venezuela's petroleum reserves are recognized as the largest in the world. By the end of 2019, BP's review of the world energy estimated that the country had a whopping 303 million barrels of oil. By building an economy on the success of oil prices, it distorts everything else, Morris said. Duh. And by building an economy on the success of oil prices, they really mean building their government on taking over the oil industry. Because that's what happened. This is why we say socialism destroyed the economy. Well, I'll get into that in a moment. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. When the price of oil goes high, the country does well. But when the price of oil collapses, everything goes to hell, he said. The thriving oil reserves caused the country to put all of its eggs in one basket. Yeah, that's what caused it. Not the singular takeover of the oil industry to provide absolutely everything else. All the social programs, everything. Not through taxation, not through printing more money, well, until more recently, but through taking all the profits from the oil company. What I'm saying here is the thriving oil reserve did not cause the country to put all of its eggs in one basket. That was the country's independent decision. They did not need to do that. It focused mostly on oil production, while other industries have seen less interest, like agriculture, which has been the case historically, Moore said. In economics, and this is true, this is known as Dutch disease, which is basically, like he says, when you put all your eggs in one basket, when you have one thriving industry and you focus on it extraordinarily intently, which basically every single market fluctuates. So if you want your economy to fluctuate at the same rate, it's a good way to do it. The country's economic standing fell when oil prices began dropping in the 1980s. While growth was restored and the economy leveled out, it left poverty in its wake. The rise of Chavez. Okay, he keeps going through, but I think you get the general point already. This is a long article, and you can go ahead and read it. Maybe throw in some things in the comments that you actually like about the article and some things that you wish I would have talked about. But I'm just going to focus on this top section where he lays out his argument, which is socialism didn't cause the destruction of Venezuela. What caused it was the evil oil companies, which also happened to be the Venezuelan government, but we don't have to talk about that, I guess. Essentially, the argument he's laying out is that it wasn't socialist. Look, socialism works. It works. But the oil prices fell. What can they do about that? Now, here I have a chart of the oil prices falling when Maduro takes office. Now, not both of these guys are socialists, okay? Chavez is a little bit more socialist, but both of them just kept throwing more social programs at their people. And I'm going to get into the socialist trap here in a moment. But 2013, Maduro takes office. Boom, prices of oil fall. They just drop. This is actually, you'll remember that the GOP Congress took over, and the United States started mining their own oil. And this basically dropped the oil prices all around the world, which I don't know about you, I like paying less for gas. I don't think it's a bad thing. In fact, I remember pretty much every single time this happens, our economy thrives. But that's because we have a self-correcting market. Venezuela did not. So what you'll see here is it drops. Their GDP drops with the oil prices. They make a little bit of a rebound. They start selling a little more oil. And then boom, collapses from $334 billion to $68 billion. Huge crash. To the point where people are eating their dogs, rats. They have no refrigeration. The electricity is off at this point. It's just a shit show. Venezuela is a state that had taken over their largest industry, which is the oil industry, because they saw that there were high profits. Now, what do businesses do with high profits? A lot of times they put it into other investments, such as stocks or other companies, so that they can hedge against market fluctuation. But what Venezuela did with these profits is they put them into social programs. So you'll see from 1999 to 2013, they did pretty well. But, as always happens, when their profits start to wane, they're stuck with these policies, with these social programs. And so they still have to keep dishing out these profits that are non-existent to the social programs, and that causes the government to print more money and causes mass inflation, as what happened in Venezuela. This is the fear of socialism. I'm going to go ahead and get to another example here, a little less known, I think. If you guys know about it, good for you. In fact, throw in the comment section any other examples you would have wanted me to hit on, and if you knew of this example that I'm about to bring up already. So for anybody wondering why India is lagging so far behind China, I'm going to give you some good reasoning here. Indira Gandhi is what the title is. Indira Gandhi's bank nationalization was an economic failure, but a smashing political success. You could replace that with socialism is an economic failure, but a smashing political success. In fact, I'll give you other proof of that right now. As you can tell, that's that notorious German leader on the cover of Time magazine in 1939. And here we have notorious German leader was actually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1939 as well. Okay? And for those of you guys that say he wasn't a real socialist, okay, let me tell you how he took over. I'm going to give you a quick rundown, and I'm going to try to make it in under a minute or two, just so you guys have a better understanding of what happened. Essentially, this is during the Great Depression time. There's a whole lot of chaos and mass inflation. You know, everybody's heard the stories of people bringing wheelbarrows of cash in Germany during the 1940s, 1938, 1939, that area, just to buy a loaf of bread. And then by the time they get there, they don't have enough because the inflation's risen so much. And this is partially caused by Germany being forced to pay for all of World War I, essentially, and by their military being taken away. What happens is they have a parliamentary system. I guess I'll have to explain this as well. So for those of you over here in America who don't know what a parliamentary system is and exactly how it works, essentially, it's not a two-party system like we have here. It's more like you elect in the party you want, and then they elect in the prime minister. So what happened is you had over 200 different parties running for prime minister. Notorious German leader happened to be in one of them and got 10% of the vote. Now they were switching prime ministers all the time, just constantly. So what notorious German leader did was he sent all of his political opponents to jail right after he was elected. This kind of got rid of the issue of being unelected constantly, and he could make his changes. So what he did was he took the social policies that were popular before he got in, such as free childcare, free healthcare, you name it, pretty much. He was doing it all. And he cut the currency and switched it to francs. So he erased all the prior currency and he replaced the currency with a new one that held its value better. And he also went and took a hated on religious group, and he took their money. He essentially told everybody, and this may sound familiar to you, he essentially told all the Germans that this group was oppressing them and had taken their stuff and was hoarding it. They wouldn't even trade it with the Germans. They're hoarding it because they want to keep it from you. Therefore, we should take it from them. And these people are evil, and therefore, any monstrosity that we do to them is justified. Okay, that's essentially how this horrible event happened. But for those of you that are convinced that he's not a socialist, you're very wrong. That's how he got power. In fact, that's how he spun so much hate against this group, is by saying they took from you, you should take back from them. Now everyone in America, UK, really the West, pretty much the whole world, except for maybe some small parts, should recognize this sort of speech because we hear it all the time. And people are just so personally irresponsible that they hear it and they go, yeah, that makes sense. I want free stuff. I'm going down a rabbit hole here. I'm going back to India. Okay, I'm going to quickly go into what Gandhi did. So they were in an economic downturn, and Gandhi was trying, we're talking about Indira Gandhi here, squash the Swatantra from Congress. So what did she do? She jailed them and also took over the banks as kind of a cover-up. Now the banks, they crashed. I mean, the currency inflated, loans were pretty much given out to everybody who didn't pay them back, and everyone kind of suffered from it, but she, like it says, profited extraordinarily politically from it, which is really the point of socialism. Look, I had a conversation with my friend who said that he would be willing to pay half of his income, which was non-existent, by the way, so it's kind of disingenuous. But he said that he would be willing to pay half of his income if it meant free education. And I said, well, do you think that Congress would really, that our politicians would really use that for what they say they would? His response to that was, well, we just need to make sure we get it into the hands of non-corrupt politicians. For which I said, I prefer just to call them politicians. Look, if you really think that these people are taking your rights so they can protect you, you are dead wrong. Be wary of anybody who tries to take your... This is relationship, this is government, this is anything. Anybody who tries to take your rights from you by saying that they can make your life better, that they can protect you, that they can keep you safe, they're not going to. This is how abusers function oftentimes. This is how dictators function pretty much all the time. I kind of want to end with a short analysis of a few other dictatorial socialist countries. And the marks that you can see on our culture that reflect these cultures at the time. Now, I did India, it's a little less known. I went into some less known background on Germany in the 1940s. And now I want to get into some less talked about, but what should be at least extremely well-known socialist dictators. First one is going to be Soviet Union dictator. I don't know if I'm allowed to say their names. I might get demonetized. So we'll just say Soviet Union dictator. Now, if any of you guys listen to Dr. Jordan Peterson, I'm sure that you have heard of the book, The Gulag Archipelago. In this book, Socialism, how do you say his name? Damn, it's hard. I wish I was Russian. Anyway, in this book, the author talks about how he was personally responsible for these concentration camps that he had been entrapped in, because that's the only person he could really blame. When it boiled down to it, it was just him who he could have made to make a difference. But everybody, they sacrificed too much of their freedom for the eat the rich mentality, in which they ended up killing the rich people. And then the people under that, who are now the rich people. Maybe the top 1%, but now there's a new top 1%. And this came all the way down to the good farmers. And they killed the good farmers. And then they killed the farmers. And now they have no food production. All in the name of equality. Okay, you have Pol Pot in Vietnam, who pledged to make everybody equal. So what did he do? Well, he couldn't make illiterate people literate, so he just killed the literate people. He couldn't make the dumb people smart, so he just killed the smart people. He made the rich people poor, but didn't make the poor people rich. It never works out that way. Going on to China's monstrosity. The still praised Mao essentially did the same thing as Stalin, but with a few more brutal methods to force people to comply. These would be known as Maoist struggle sessions, when they would pull people into the street and force them to quote-unquote admit their sins in front of the group so they could have quote-unquote long discussions on their morals and where the culture should head. If they refused, they were beaten. And if they still refused, they were hanged. All in the name of equality. All in the name of the rich oppressing the poor. All in the name of closing that gap and making things quote-unquote equitable. This is not a system you want to be a part of. They would shout, "Eat the rich," in the Soviet Union, in the Great Leap Forward under Mao. It was common to hate on the quote-unquote oppressing group in Germany and China and Russia and Italy under Mussolini and Vietnam and Venezuela under Chavez and Vietnam under Pol Pot. They justified their violence by saying every ideology justifies violence. It just depends on who it is against. Now I know what you're thinking. Pretty much the only violence I like to justify is self-defense. Their response to you would be, this is self-defense because we had been wronged by the rich and therefore must destroy them. It's not about love for the poor. It's about hate for the rich. If you want one lesson from recent Venezuela or from semi-recent Cuba under Castro, or from Russia or China or Greece or Germany or Vietnam or Italy or any of these places that have been poisoned by this ideology, it would be take personal responsibility for the things going wrong in your life, even though it probably isn't 100% your fault, because blaming it on other people is just going to end in fire. Taking over the banks is never going to be the answer. Taking over the oil industry will never be the answer. Taking over the healthcare system will be just as dangerous as these other two. That's my ramble for today. I am the Reasonable Conservative. Thank you for listening. If you want to help me out, the best thing you can do is like, subscribe, and share. Go ahead and throw a comment down below on how you liked the information, what you thought I could do better, what you thought I did well. Just talk to me. How's your day going? Whatever you want. And most importantly, you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day.